Welcome on into the podcast. I'm Brett,
Hey, I'm Dorian.
and we got your nerd news.
We do. Brought to you by You Heard with Nerds. So, what we're going to be talking about this week is we're going to be talking about Star Wars Visions, this new anime Star Wars thing that Disney Plus is going to be putting out. We're also going to be talking about Comic Con 2021, what that's going to be looking like, the latest Loki episode. But biggest news of the week, we'll get right to it. The Switch Pro has been something that's been rumored, leaked, all this good stuff for the longest period of time.
Yeah,
And
we've
now
been talking about it.
we've been talking about it. And
Yeah.
now we finally got the curtain pulled back on us. We actually know what all these leaks, all these stories, all these reports were leading up to. And well, it's not the Switch Pro, at least how we all envisioned it. It's basically the Switch OLED model. That's the official name for it. Nintendo's not.
Yeah, not creative.
Yeah, I mean,
with names.
I mean, I was expecting like something like like the Switch Plus or the new Switch or something like that. Kind of like how their branding has been in the past. But
Yeah,
so to kind of go in the details of what exactly this thing is. So for
Switch
starters,
XL. You could have done the Switch XL.
yeah, exactly, like something like that. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but to get into like what this thing is, so this is essentially, as the name implies, a Nintendo Switch with the OLED screen. So it's going to be a nicer screen. It's also going to be a bigger screen, 7 inches.
Yeah,
Um, in length or diameter, however you measure that here. But it's also going to have a better storage. So the regular Switch has 32 gigabytes of storage. This one's going to essentially double it, be 64 gigabytes of internal storage total.
still need an SD card. It's
Yeah,
not like you don't not need that anymore.
right. And I mean, again, when you can get like a 500 gigabyte SD card for like $30, it's like, okay, yeah, like
Why isn't this included?
well, I mean, it's not that big of a selling point in all
No.
honesty. So
No.
it's also got a better kickstand instead of that flimsy kickstand that came with the first Switch. It actually is like the whole length of the screen essentially. So
Yeah.
that's actually pretty nice.
If you ever use that, then sure.
Yeah, exactly. And then I think I've used it maybe once or twice, like since owning that thing. So
I think I did, and then I was like, I don't want this to break, so I just propped it up.
yeah. So, and then we also have a LAN port, which that's something you can buy for your Switch already for like about $30 or so. So again, not like a crazy new feature per se, but it does have better battery life when you're playing in handheld.
Mm-hmm.
It's roughly about 4.5 hours to 9 hours, depending on what games you're playing. Some games, are a bigger draw than others here.
Yeah.
In terms of features, that's about it. It's going to cost you it'll cost you exactly, $349.99 before taxes. And side note, if you're just more interested in just like getting that dock for like the LAN port and all that, you can just purchase that separately for $60 here. So comes out October 8th, same day that Metroid Dread comes out.
Yep.
Brett,
Yeah.
is this our hopes and dreams for what we wanted from the Switch Pro?
No, this is no one's hopes and dreams. And if you do like this, then you're the worst because I think this is targeted at the people who bought the Switch Lite, to be honest, because it's a heavy focus on mobile gaming. Like it's not like, okay, for instance, if you watch the trailer, and I don't know how we can show video on this thing, but remember the scene where the guy, he literally walks in, he looks like he got off work, he walks in, puts his keys down, sits on a bench, doesn't go to his living room, sits on a bench, pulls his Switch out, and is playing it in the walkway into his house. He doesn't go dock it.
Yeah, no.
Because you want to know why? Because it doesn't matter if it's docked. There's no 4K. There's nothing that appeals to an audience that wants to dock this thing. It's just a stupid upgrade for people who play in handheld mode in their bed at night. Big deal. Like, I don't think this is anything anyone wanted, to be honest. Like, we got the revision what was it, last year? We got the revision to the Switch where it has the better battery like this one does. It doesn't have a bigger screen. Everything's the same, but it's a better battery and all that stuff. So To me,
Yeah.
most of these specs don't mean jack. It doesn't qualify a 300 or a $50 price hike. If anything, I thought this was going to be when I found out what it actually was. It's not a Switch Pro. I thought this was going to be $299, and that they might have lowered the standard Switch.
Right.
40 or $50 depending.
Right.
Make it right around 249.99 would have been great. Because if you look at the lifespan right now, we're towards the end, I guess, of the Switch itself until a new one comes out in a couple years. But who knows?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I mean, all the people were right who were talking about that this is going to have an OLED screen and this, that, and the other thing. But this is definitely not a Switch Pro, in my opinion.
Right.
So
yeah.
screw you, Nintendo.
Well, I mean, we'll get to who we want to be mad about in just a second. Just because, here's the thing. I mean, somebody like myself, I primarily play my Switch in dock mode. Like, maybe about 20% of like the time I've played my Switch, maybe I played it in handheld somewhere around there. Where, I was at a hotel and I didn't have away from home, or I was at the laundromat.
Trip. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. All that stuff here. So here's the thing. Most of these features, I think, by and large, appeal to people who primarily play this thing in handheld mode. And I mean, granted, like, sure, better screen, nicer screen, better battery life and all that stuff, better kickstand, blah, blah, blah. If I was like somebody who was playing this thing primarily handheld, I'd be like, yeah, okay, that actually sounds pretty good. But the problem is like, it's, you already have a model that's supposed to essentially be like your handheld only model, and that's the Switch Lite. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, okay, so hold up. Like, so we have one that's primarily, designed just to be solely a handheld device. It doesn't even dock here. And now you got this thing that's primarily, designed to appeal to the people who play this thing in handheld. It's like, yeah, I kind of feel like you're splitting hairs on that here or something like that. I don't know. But talking about like who we need to be mad about, here's the question. Should we be mad at Nintendo for making this? Or should we be mad at the leakers saying that this was going to be 4K, this was going to have an upgraded chipset, all these things, and like led us to believe that this was actually going to be essentially a soft upgrade or like, a next gen, like, kind of a next gen type thing here?
I think both. I think that there's still potential for a Switch Pro in the future. Like, with as popular as the Switch is, it's it's not only a on the go device, it's also something you can home console with. Yeah, I don't know if they don't want to change up that. I don't think at all. Maybe for the future. I think if anything, you just keep improving this model. You update the graphics, you do all that stuff, and you keep coming out with revisions like they've done.
Yeah.
And eventually, after 2 or 3 more revisions, then I might buy one because it's going to play 4K, and they're going to have certain games that only play on whatever model and above. Because I think, like you said a couple of weeks ago, it makes sense for them now to go into like almost like a phone kind of model where they're slowly upgrading these things, and then once you're like 3 or 4 generations deep, then it's time to get a new one because your battery is getting low, or the graphics are a lot better, the CPU is faster. Because I don't think they need to change to just either a mobile console, or they don't need to like choose. They're both, and so I think what they have going for them was working. Yeah. So I don't see an end in sight for the Switch itself. I think the original Switch models will get outdated in the next few years, though, to where you will kind of have to upgrade in order to play the newest games and all that. So,
yeah, I mean, well, not to mention the Switch, just as a piece of hardware, is already outdated here. I mean, we're talking like
it was outdated when it came out. If you look at specs,
exactly. So, I mean, we're talking. We're really talking like essentially this is like essentially a portable Xbox 360, PlayStation 3 here, more or less here. But yeah, I mean, I think I agree with you on that whole like phone thing. I mean, because there's been talk about video game companies getting away from like the traditional like generational or the traditional generations for video game consoles. You have Sony and Xbox last generation. They did PS4 Pro, Xbox One X, stuff like that. Kind of like these these halfway generation upgrades or something like that.
Yeah.
And for the Switch, I mean, seeing how they don't have they're not splitting their market. Nintendo isn't splitting their market between a console and a handheld piece of hardware. It's like the Switch is now all encompassing. So I think whatever their next their future for their next console is looking like, I think it has to be, continuing along that same line, because I mean, why would you go back to splitting up the market at this point here?
Right.
So I think it makes the most sense for them to continue the smartphone route, and then eventually you get to the point where it's like, okay, this is only good on the Switch 2 here, or something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let's talk a little bit about the cons coming up. So Comic-Con being, I think, the next one that's coming out, and that's going to be July 23rd through 25th. And we just found out this last week, or 2 weeks ago now, I guess, Marvel and DC are now both skipping Comic-Con's digital event, and this makes total sense. DC having really good, or Warner Brothers, if you want to call it that, Warner Brothers having really good, they had a really good representation with the DC fandom. Mm-hmm. I think they're probably going to do the exact same event, and they probably did the best out of anyone at a Comic-Con, everyone. And so they're skipping. Marvel's going to be doing their own thing. So now it's like, well, what's going to be at these events, like the Comic-Con event? Like, we kind of, I think, touched on it last year where we were like, I at least thought Comic-Con was dead. And I think now that you see this, it's going to be tough for them to come back with these other people doing their own cons and whatnot. But I won't say they're dead quite yet, but what do you think about this? Is this going to do anything, you think?
This is something that's kind of interesting. I mean, granted, I'm someone who, in terms of like conventions and stuff like that, I follow like E3 more regularly on a regular basis for the most part. So, I mean, I don't think that the digital event thing has been working for Comic-Con. It didn't really work last year, so I don't really see it working again this year. I mean, prove me wrong, but we are at the point where Comic-Con is, now it doesn't have the two biggest guns. It doesn't have Marvel. It doesn't have DC. So in terms of like what they're going to be able to show, I feel like it's going to be pretty limited here for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, it's a Comic-Con like in the most general form, and your two biggest labels will not be there. So it's kind of an interesting. If you're just thinking the comic side, not necessarily the cinematic side, it's your two biggest hitters. So it doesn't fare well for them, but we'll see what happens. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the WitcherCon. So I've been seeing trailers for this everywhere on YouTube. Like they're pushing it pretty hard, even to people like me who don't really delve into Witcher stuff. Yeah. So the season 2 trailer came out when they made this announcement, correct?
Yeah. So, well, the WitcherCon's already happened. It
did happen. Okay.
It's already happened. So they unveiled a couple things. I'll get into it. So, basically, what that's looking like for this is, so we have a season 2 trailer for The Witcher on Netflix. So the trailer mostly focuses on Geralt and Ciri because at the end of the first season, they finally, found each other here. And it looks like this season is going to be a lot more chronological, because the last season they threw in a bunch of episodes that were not chronologically tied. They didn't tell you that it was like out of order or like, in different time periods. So you kind of didn't really have, you kind of had to piece things together. And by the time you got to the end, it started, okay, now it kind of starts making sense, or like it's, you're finally let in on the fact that what you were watching was not done in chronological order here. And they're like actually, hundreds of years apart, essentially, for the most part. But so so we might actually be getting like a little bit more cohesive storytelling in that regard. It shows Kaer Morhen and like some of the other Witchers, which is something that was teased, and we're probably going to see. I think we're supposed to see Vesemir, which is
Where's Mark Hamill?
yeah, he's not. He turned it down, I guess, or he did, or something. I don't know. I mean, which is a shame because I would have really liked Mark Hamill as Vesemir here, but yeah. So this will premiere on Netflix December 17th. So it will. Yeah. So I'm interested in it. I thought like the first season of it was okay. I'm kind of hoping they really find their ground with this season and actually, knock it out of the park this go around here. So we'll see.
Right.
So the next thing that they talked about, so Nightmare of the Wolf, which is that animated movie that they announced a while back. So this movie is going to be talking about Vesemir, which is Geralt's mentor. It's going to be an animated movie. I think it's from the same guys who did the Castlevania show. It looks like the same animation style or something like that. And it's going to be coming out next month, August 23rd, 21. So,
well,
yeah. So, and then the last thing that they announced, kind of interesting, kind of cool, and also kind of a weird decision on a certain level. We'll get to that in just a second. Basically, what it is Witcher Ronin, which essentially is like kind of an alternate universe project where Geralt is a Ronin in feudal Japan, and he's fighting monsters from Japanese folklore. And it's going to have one of the editors from the book team up with manga artist. I don't know his name or didn't really recognize him for anything. So they're going to be bringing the project to life. And the Kickstarter is, or let me back that up. It's going to be a Kickstarter. And they say they're doing it for two reasons. One, to create a collector's edition, which I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, fine. I mean, you could have done that without a Kickstarter. And two, they wanted to launch the manga globally. Now, I don't know if there's like some sort of weird restrictions on like pairing up with like, say, Dark Horse or one of the other independent comic book companies. But it kind of seems weird that you need to do a Kickstarter in order to launch it globally and also create a collector's edition. So,
yeah, I mean, it depends what their budget was, but at the same time, I'm like, they probably didn't want to go with another publisher because they wanted to publish it themselves and make all the money. That's what I'm guessing.
Yeah,
I don't know how all that works, but
yeah, I mean, that being said, I mean, I'm actually kind of interested in that whole. Like,
yeah, it sounds cool.
Yeah, it sounds cool. Like
Demon Slayer, basically.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, it sounds like it just seems like a good fit.
Definitely, I agree. Yeah. I actually would check out this manga. All right, well, Tom Hardy's now a writer, so he's going to be getting a writer's credit on Venom 2, Let There Be Carnage, because he spent months and months kind of brainstorming with the writers on what the next steps for Venom would be. So pretty cool that he put in all that work and it cares that much about the project that they're giving him a writer's credit. Just wanted to bring that to light. And then also, we had a Star Wars Vision trailer this last week or so. And for those of you who don't know, if you didn't see the investor meeting last year for Disney, this is a project they've been working on where they're going to different studios basically and having them do stories kind of in an anime style. So each different company is going to have their own story, which are all new stories. The one that caught my eye was kind of the Ronin looking one, where it was very heavily like samurai. Sakura like kind of vibes, like it just looked really cool. So I'm excited for this project. I can't remember when they said it's premiering. I want to say it's later this year, but I could be way off on that. And then basically I think it's 6 different installments, so it's like 6 different stories.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing, like on its like face, just if this announcement exists in a vacuum, I'd be excited for it. I mean, especially just because Star Wars and samurai, like I kind of feel like they really do kind of mesh pretty well together. You know, Jedi and samurai sword fighting, blah blah blah, all that stuff here. But here's the thing: we've had a couple of things like this in the past. Like Animatrix was one of them, where you had 6 different like anime artists or anime studios do their own take on the Matrix, and they did the same with Batman, Batman, Gotham Knight, 6 different
Yeah.
versions of or like visions of Batman, and I think even like Halo at one point had something like this. So and with these things, like you have some like ones that are like, okay, this short or this episode or whatever you want to call it, this one was good, this one was okay, this one was bad, and I kind of feel like you're probably going to get the same type of thing if the same type of thing with Star Wars here, essentially.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I wasn't really a fan of the Animatrix at all. So hopefully they do a lot better on this. But with that said, Book of Boba Fett, we got some more info on that. So there are going to be some directors, familiar faces coming from The Mandalorian. We're going to have Dave Filoni, Jon Favreau, Bryce Dallas Howard, and Robert Rodriguez will all be on this show as directors. I'm guessing it's going to be the same thing where each of them have kind of their own episode, their own thing thrown into that. And so Tamura, I think it's Tamura Morrison, the guy that plays Boba and Jango, recently said that Disney currently doesn't have a second season planned yet, but that doesn't necessarily mean there isn't one. They like anything. They're going to try to figure out if it's going to work or if it's not going to work. I'm guessing it's going to work with how many people were hyped when he was in Mandalorian. So, yeah, we'll see with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, and not to mention, and we've talked about this, throughout, us knowing each other, and when we ever talk Star Wars, we never quite got, why Boba Fett was, really a big thing before, this last, right, I mean, outside of, some of the stuff that came out of, the expanded universe stuff that was before Disney bought it, it was kind of like one of those things, okay, yeah, sure, he looks cool, but it's why is there such a fan base revolving around this one character that didn't have a lot of screen time in the original trilogy? But yeah, that being said, I mean, it kind of seems like at least this is almost confirming that we aren't getting Mandalorian season 3 this year, because we're seeing a lot of the talent from Mandalorian being transitioning over to this show. And also we haven't really heard anything about it here. So I think this is essentially going to be subbing in for Mandalorian season 3 as opposed to, just the third season. So,
right. Yeah, I agree with you on that. So yeah, we'll see. But your best friend's at it again, Dorian. So Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder's unmade Star Wars movie will get made by Netflix and also not be a Star Wars movie. It's going to be called Rebel Moon, which, way to be original. Psych. The quote was, this is from IGN, Rebel Moon will follow the residents of a peaceful colony at the edge of the galaxy. As they struggle against armies sent by a tyrant named Balisarius. To combat the threat, the colony sends a young woman to gather warriors from neighboring planets to make a stand against the invading force.
Now, is there going to be space magic in this here?
There's got to be.
Is there going to be laser swords?
There's got to be laser swords.
Is there going to be a Bigfoot co-pilot for the main starship here? I mean, it's Zach. I mean, just stop. I'm embarrassed for you.
Yeah.
I mean,
Zack came out with this quote. So they said, "This is me growing up as an Akira Kurosawa fan, a Star Wars fan, and a Star Wars fan." But Snyder told the Hollywood Reporter, "It's my love of sci-fi and a giant adventure. My hope is that this also becomes a massive IP in a universe that can be built out." It already is. It's called Star Wars.
Yeah, but it's Zack Snyder's Star Wars. It's gonna have, it's gonna be slow motion. It's gonna have a 4-hour director's cut after the first one comes out. It's also going to feature a random foreshadowing and also just F-bombs as well here and just grittiness. So, I mean, So sounds great.
Yeah.
Can't wait. Yeah.
That's it for our nerd news. Let's head into our roundtable review, Dorian.
All right. So first thing first, we got Loki episode 5. We're talking about it. We're spoiling it. You haven't watched it yet? It's cool. Turn off the podcast. Come back and listen later. We understand. But we also got a couple things at the end of the episode that we'll be talking about as well. So stick around for that. So we're talking about episode 5. Pretty much picks up right after episode 4 left off in that post credit scene. Basically, Loki is banished to this place that's the end of time. It's called the Void, and there's this giant monster cloud named Eliath that's hunting down the survivors in this landscape here. So Loki meets some other variants of himself, and wouldn't you know it, essentially they all betray each other at some point here. So who could have thought?
Yeah.
But we also find out that Mobius is alive. He basically the whole pruning process is not a actual like phase out of existence. You just essentially get sent to where you get sent to where the TVA just dumps all of its trash. And it also turns out like catching back up with like Sylvie at the TVA and the director lady, I can never remember her name, but they are trying to essentially narrow down who created the TVA, who's the real timekeeper or keepers, might be multiple people, because essentially nobody at the TVA knows, not even the highest level of authority at the TVA. So those robots weren't just for show, that they were actually tricking all their workers here for the most part.
Yeah.
So that being said, Sylvie ends up pruning herself for one to save the Loki that we know, and also to go to the Void, because they basically figured out that if there's anywhere that these timekeepers or like the person who ever created the TVA is hiding, it's got to be at the end of time. So to make a long story short, they end up enchanting the big cloud monster Eliath and basically open up like the area to where they need to go to find out where the man behind the curtain is here. The
Wizard of Oz.
The person who's pulling the strings here. So that's pretty much where the episode ends.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, I thought it was a decent episode. Not as much progression as you got in the last episode, in my opinion. And I don't feel like that whole, you have essentially a Loki fight. Yeah. And just the whole Loki, multiple Loki things and having them betray each other. I don't think they really fleshed out that idea. It was just there and gone for the most part here kind of thing. So I kind of was a little bit let down by that, but otherwise, decent episode. I mean, I'm really interested to see where it's going to be going for its final episode. And matter of fact, I do have a theory on it. I want to run it by you. So I'm thinking in the last episode, the person who created the TVA is another Loki.
Yeah, I think that too.
I mean, because it makes the most sense, because you're hunting down just a bunch of Lokis here. So it's maybe he wants to be the supreme Loki or something along those lines. I don't know, but
if it's that kid, the King Loki, the little kid that had the crown on,
that'd be weird. Or maybe it's the alligator.
Could be the alligator.
It's been the alligator all along. Congratulations, everybody.
Yeah.
Plot twist. Nobody saw that coming.
I bet you it is a Loki, and it's an interesting thing that he set up all this stuff to take down himself. I don't really get it. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, we're going to see next episode, I'm guessing. So it's the last one. But yeah, I thought this episode was decent. It was pretty good. I haven't thought any of them weren't decent.
Yeah.
I liked the little, Loki kind of letting his guard down, trusting some of the other Lokis, and being more of a team player. You could see this Loki's changed for sure. I like the way, him and Sylvie are trying to get to the bottom of this. I mean, there's no way out except to really take down the whoever's running everything. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I like. It was weird to me that they had like the what's it called, the little tablet thing that you have when you could transport into different dimensions, and Mobius took off in that because Sylvie brought that with her.
Yeah.
To there, and I'm like, why didn't you just take him with you in there, and then just all leave if you need to leave? Like, I don't know. So there's a couple things where I'm like, oh, okay, I don't get that, but it's fine. Yeah, we'll see what else happens and how the TVA actually shakes out. So
yeah, no, fair enough. So, all right, next up on the review docket here. So we are talking about the Neo World Ends With You demo. The game's not out yet, but there is a demo out, I believe, on PlayStation 4 and Switch. So if you're kind of on the fence about this game, or you're not entirely sure whether or not you're going to like it or not, you got a demo you can play. So we're going to be talking just kind of our impressions about it and where we ended up yet, if we're hot or cold for this game. So, Brett, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so essentially this is 2 full chapters of gameplay, and it will carry over if you purchase the full game. So if you're worried about that, like, I don't want to waste my time, I'll just buy the game, like, definitely download it, play it before you buy it. I thought the demo was really fun. You definitely get a feel for the battle style, overall feel of the game itself, like dialogue and how the character is going to look, obviously. And I'm not complaining at all about that. I think that the battle style takes a little bit to get used to. Because essentially you fight as a team, and every button has an assignment to a character on your team. So once you get used to that, I think it's pretty fun. It's fast paced like the original game, 100% Kingdom Hearts vibes, which that obviously makes sense because the creator of this game is someone obviously who created another game that is that of Kingdom Hearts. So, and so I'm in. Like, playing through this game, the demo was decently long too. I liked that. It gave you, it didn't give you just like a little taste. It gave you quite a bit. Like, hey, this is what the game's about. Here's how it plays. And so basically you got to play to like the first boss, and then it was over. But yeah, I'm in. I'm excited for this game.
Yeah. No, I pretty much echo everything that you're pretty much saying here. I already got it pre-ordered. I really like the combat, and I think it's just only going to get better as the game goes on. And yeah, I really am digging like this kind of demo thing that Square Enix has been doing. Like, hey, you can play the demo, your progression carries over, and we're actually going to give you like a 2-chapter demo, so you're getting a decent chunk, so you actually get a good feel for the game. So I mean, if I had like any gripes or complaints, I mean, just 2 minor ones. One is that right now it feels pretty easy, but I haven't been able to unlock the harder difficulty just quite yet. So that's something that will probably be rectified at some point when I play the full version of the game. But the other thing too is like the 2 main characters. So I mean, if you don't know anything about World Ends With You, it's essentially like you're it's about a game about set up by like these kind of like supernatural forces, or like these otherworld beings and stuff like that, and you have 7 days to get make it through the game, and like otherwise if you fail at the game you're erased from existence, more or less. So but like the 2 main characters in the game, they're pretty chill about being in like a game where their life is on the line. Like, oh yeah, cool, man. Like this is like just some crazy like thing that was set up. I'm like, when are you gonna understand the gravity of your situation? Here?
I think they were. I mean, that one girl in the demo told them basically, "You've already died, and this is if you beat this game, you get to go back," like type of thing. So she's probably lying to them, but yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So, but all in all, I'm really digging what I'm seeing, what I'm playing. So yeah, I mean, it's like I said, already got it pre-ordered, day 1 purchase for me. I mean, it's one of my most anticipated games of the year, so I'm really just looking forward to get into it. And if you're on the fence about it, I will say, if you have any inclination of playing the first game, or if you want to kind of get more backstory on this whole thing, I would recommend going back and playing the first game first, because they do spoil some plot points or some plot twists from the first game. So
Yeah.
just a heads up on that.
Yep.
But so talking about The World Ends With You, I recently played the Switch version of it, which is The World Ends With You Final Remix. So we got a new game coming out this month in this franchise. So I figured, time to go back, replay, and also, if anybody was on the fence about wanting to go back and play this game, just kind of giving you my impressions of the Switch version. I went through, beat the Switch version. So here's what I think. It's a good game with a few caveats. I mean, all the good stuff from the DS, it's still there. There's two ways you can play it. You can play, handheld mode, or you can play it docked. Now with the docked, you play with one Joy-Con, and you're pretty much using like the motion controls, like the pointer controls, to pretty much do everything. Which, it doesn't sound terrible, but to activate like some powers or do some things in combat, it is.
Yeah.
And I just wish like they had like some sort of like a middle ground where they had like some analog button controls or something like that. But
sure,
but if you want to play in handheld, that's fine. I would recommend buying a stylus that can work with your Switch, which I had to end up doing. So, but at the end of the day, I mean, here's the thing: it's a nicer version of the game. It looks better, and you get to play it on your Switch. But if you have a DS and you're willing to like go back and play the DS version, I would probably recommend that over buying the Switch version. It's $20, whereas like the Switch version is like $50, and it's, in my opinion, asking a little too much. But
yeah,
that's all I got.
That's it, guys. Thanks for listening. We greatly appreciate it. Check us out on our social medias. Leave us a like, comment, subscribe, all those good things. Have an awesome week, and remember, everyone's a nerd about something.